It was April 10, 1941, as Nazi tanks rolled into Zagreb and the Kingdom of Yugoslavia collapsed. Church bells rang and flags were raised. A new state was declared, the Independent State of Croatia, or NDH. But this was not a nation born of freedom. It was a puppet regime carved out by Hitler and Mussolini and handed to a man whose name would soon become synonymous with brutality. Ante Pavelić, lawyer, politician, and fascist, returned from exile to lead this new Croatia. But what he created was not a republic or a kingdom. It was a killing ground. Under his rule, hundreds of thousands, Serbs, Jews, Roma, and political dissidents were murdered in camps and massacres, many with shocking cruelty. Entire communities were erased. Yet outside the Balkans, his name remains a footnote, a whisper beneath the larger shadows of Hitler and Mussolini. This is the story of Ante Pavelić, the fascist who turned Croatia into one of World War II's darkest and least known nightmares. Ante Pavelić was born on July 14, 1889, in Bradina, a small village in the mountainous region of Herzegovina. Then, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, he studied law in Zagreb and became politically active during the turbulent years following World War I. In 1918, the Habsburg Empire collapsed and South Slavs united into the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, later renamed Yugoslavia, but the union was uneasy. Croats, like Pavelić, increasingly felt dominated by the central government in Belgrade, which was Serb-led. Political tensions deepened, often spilling into violence. Pavelić became a vocal nationalist. By the 1920s, he was a member of the Party of Rights, which advocated for Croatian autonomy and eventually independence. But Pavelić wanted more than autonomy. He wanted a Croatia for Croats only. In 1929, King Alexander I banned political parties and declared a royal dictatorship. Pavelić fled into exile. From there, he would reshape Croatian nationalism into something far more radical and far more dangerous. While in exile in Italy, Pavelić founded the Ustaše, a fascist ultranationalist organization committed to violently overthrowing Yugoslavia and creating an ethnically pure Croatian state. The Ustaše borrowed heavily from Italian fascism and German Nazism, combining nationalism with a fanatical hatred of Serbs, Jews, and communists. They found an ally in Benito Mussolini, who hoped to use the group as a tool to destabilize Yugoslavia and expand Italian influence in the Balkans. With Mussolini's support, Pavelić trained Ustaše forces in Italy and Hungary, preparing for the moment Yugoslavia would fall. That moment came in April 1941. On April 6, 1941, Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy invaded Yugoslavia. Within days, the Yugoslav state disintegrated. The Axis powers divided its territory, and on April 10th, the Independent State of Croatia, NDH, was proclaimed. Ante Pavelić returned from exile and was installed as Poglavnik, the leader. The NDH was a puppet state, its borders drawn by the Axis and its policies shaped by fascist ideology. But Pavelić embraced his role with zeal. His vision of a greater Croatia included most of modern-day Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina regions with large Serb populations. To him, this was a problem to be solved, and the solution was genocide. Pavelić's regime moved quickly. New laws stripped Jews, Serbs, and Roma of rights, property, and identity. Forced conversions to Catholicism were demanded of Serbs. Those who refused faced deportation or death. Pavelić ordered the creation of a vast system of concentration camps. The most infamous was Jasenovac, which were often industrial in method. Ustaše killings were intimate, carried out with knives, hammers, and blunt tools. Entire villages were massacred. Churches were burned. Clergy were executed. Children were slaughtered. The scale was staggering. It's estimated that over 300,000 Serbs were killed under Pavelić's regime, around 30,000 Jews, nearly the entire Jewish population of Croatia, were murdered. Tens of thousands of Roma were also exterminated. Even Nazi officials, known for their own brutality, were at times disturbed by the sadism of the Ustaše. German envoys reported scenes of horror: villages annihilated, corpses mutilated, women and children butchered. Yet Pavelić remained committed. He called it national cleansing. He called it justice. But the NDH was never stable. Opposition emerged almost immediately, most notably from Josip Broz, Tito's communist partisans, who waged a growing insurgency across Yugoslavia. Even some Serb nationalists formed their own militias, the Chetniks, although their loyalties and methods were often murky as the war dragged on. The NDH became a state in chaos, propped up by German and Italian forces, but plagued by corruption, infighting, and constant resistance. By 1943, Italy had fallen, and Germany was on the defensive. Pavelić relied more and more on German SS support, but the end was near. In 1945, as the Allies closed in and the Red Army advanced from the east, Pavelić fled. He left behind a shattered state and mass graves stretching across Croatia and Bosnia. Pavelić's escape was quiet but calculated, using the infamous Ratlin's secret escape networks. Run by fascist sympathizers and some Catholic officials, he fled to Austria, then Italy, and eventually to Argentina, where he was welcomed by Juan Perón's government. There, under a false name, he lived in exile, giving speeches, maintaining contacts with the Ustaše diaspora, and dreaming of a return. But the world had not forgotten. In 1957, he was shot twice by a Montenegrin assassin in Buenos Aires. He survived, but with injuries that never healed, he fled to Spain, then under Franco, where he died in 1960. Never tried for his crimes. Ante Pavelić died a free man, but the legacy he left behind in Bosnia, in Croatia, and in Serbia is one of division, trauma, and denial. For decades under Tito's post-war Yugoslavia, the crimes of the NDH were downplayed or buried, part of a larger effort to promote unity, but the memories never disappeared. Jasenovac remains one of the most infamous killing sites in Europe. Memorials and controversies still surround it. In parts of the Croatian far right, Pavelić is still praised by a radical fringe, his name shouted at football games, his image printed on shirts. Yet, for many others, Croats, Serbs, and Bosniaks alike, he remains a symbol of everything that went wrong in the dark corners of World War II. Ante Pavelić never commanded vast armies like Hitler or Mussolini. He didn't draft global alliances or envision world conquest. What he did, however, was no less horrific. He took a fragile, diverse land and reduced it to ideology. He turned neighbors into enemies. He used state power not to protect, but to exterminate. In the shadows of Europe's grander tragedies, his crimes are often forgotten, but the people who vanished in forests, camps, and fields are not. Saw purity as a goal, violence as a tool, and history as something to be rewritten in blood. Ante Pavelić did not build a nation. He built a machine of terror and left behind a silence that still echoes in the Balkans.